But now, for 4 or 5 days, the entire force, including the soldiers and animals, have all been starving. And there is no money left to pay even their basic expenses. All the soldiers are determined to fight, but they ask us, how can a man who has been fasting for 2 or 3 days do battle? Therefore we hope, out of your largesse and largeness of heart, can you please provide for the expenses incurred by your royal force, and honour us humble ones with a reply? Otherwise, if you cannot, inform us. For until arrangements are made for payment, no soldier can do battle. Please do not construe this as disobedience, but should you not wish this force to remain, then kindly give us a clear answer. Whatever is ordained will happen. Innumerable petitions have been sent earlier, but we have not yet received any response. With the greatest respect and devotedly, General Sudari Singh. So as August develops, this army which has collected so dramatically in Delhi begins to disperse, not so much out of disillusion, though there is a measure of that, but because they're starving. There's no money, there's no arms, there's no artillery, the whole thing's a mess. Meanwhile, the British have got their act together. There are very few British white troops in India. There's only about 10,000. These are up in the hill stations. This is May, so they're up in the hill stations like Simla and up in the Punjab. And they march down the Grand Trunk Road to the ridge in Delhi, ready to attack the city. But while the Illustrated London News presents a picture of plucky white troops heading off to do their bit, what they don't show is the reality that the British managed to hire, by bribes and by promises of regular payment, and particularly by the promise of looting Delhi, 100,000 mercenaries, most of whom are from what is now Pakistan. They hire the Punjabi Muslims of Multan, who today are forming most of the jihadi fighting forces in Kashmir. They recruit the Sikhs from around Lahore, and particularly they recruit exactly the same Waziri tribesmen from what's now FATA, the tribal areas on the edge of Pakistan, who are attacking our brave boys in Helmand. So exactly the same guys who are giving us the headache today are enlisted en masse, 100,000 of them. These guys swagger with these huge turbans down the Grand Trunk Roads with the hope of looting Delhi. And the British, who have lost an entire army in 6 weeks, managed to bribe and pay and gather this enormous mercenary army of 100,000 irregulars in an incredibly short period of time. They also managed to bring down the Grand Trunk Road the super gun of the period, these enormous guns which are pulled by 12 elephants each down from Ferozpur. And in early September, these are lined up outside the Kashmiri Gate. An incredible bombardment of the walls of Delhi proceeds. Every day they move the guns a bit closer. And on the 12th of September, 1857, the troops go in. Now, the British expect this to be, as George Tenet famously said of Iraq, a slam dunk. It is no such thing. Although the troops are starving, and although many of them have dispersed to their villages, those that remain are the hardcore. And they've had 3 months to put grape shot in every loophole, to have sniper posts and everything, every trap door and every booby trap has been primed. Whole mud forts have been built in various areas in gardens of the north of the city. And the British go in, 100,000 troops led by the Lancers and by these Waziris. And of those, 1/3 of those are dead or wounded by the first evening. There's an incredible Somme-like, catastrophic casualty rate, an incredible resistance. On top of that, some clever strategist has placed all the confiscated alcohol from British houses just within the Kashmiri Gate. So as soon as the troops establish their foothold there, all the remaining 2/3 of British troops who are not dead or wounded are completely legless by the evening of the first day, leading to an incredible stalemate. The British have got within the walls, but only just. They failed in their objective to take any of the western walls of the city. So the British Commander, General Wilson, is worried that the crack Borelli troops who control the Ajmeri Gate could do a sideways swing and cut off the British troops from their supplies. And for 48 hours, both armies are hovering on the edge of retreat and flight. Neither of them know who is going to give first. And it happens by accident, 3 days later, that there is an eclipse of the sun at noon on the 17th of September. Now, for the British, this is a big shock. No one's been looking at their calendars or almanacs. The whole city goes black at noon. But for Hindu troops, this is a far more significant thing. Even today, if you go to Rajasthan during an eclipse, all the temples are closed. No upper caste Hindu will go out during an eclipse. And during the far more superstitious 19th century, this was considered the ultimate ill omen, the end of a dynasty. And that night, there is a noise like the buzzing of 1,000 beehives in the... and it's the sepoys fleeing by night across the bridge of boats. At midnight, Zafar is woken by his troops and told, his guard, and told that all the sepoys have fled the Red Fort. There is no one guarding his palace anymore. So he gathers his ancestral relics, he distributes some to his family, and he then takes a small body of supporters and his wife and his younger son and goes into a boat and by night glides down the Jamna, gets off near the Ghat at Nizamuddin. He hands over his most precious relics to the Sufi shrine at Nizamuddin, saying to the Pirzadas, "Now there is not a shadow of doubt left that of the great house of Timur, I am the last to be seated on the throne of India. The lamp of Mughal dominion is fast extinguishing. It will remain but a few hours more. The country belongs to God. He may give it to whosoever he likes." He then goes and waits to surrender himself in his ancestral mausoleum, Humayun's tomb. His wife has been in correspondence with William Hodson, the British intelligence chief, and the following day he turns up with a palanquin and accepts the surrender of Zafar, his wife and his younger son, in return for their lives. They get into the palanquin, they head back to Delhi, but they're not given their old rooms, their old apartments, and the Diwani Khas, which has now become a British officers' mess with kind of planters' chairs and camp beds and whatever put up in it. Instead, he's thrown into the stables in the hay, where he's put on display like a bear in the cage in a zoo. Following day, Hodson goes back and he takes the surrender of the three leading rebel princes, Mirza Kizar Sultan, Mirza Abu Bakr, and Mirza Mughal. They get into the same palanquin, they head back towards Delhi on the same route, but just short of the walls of the city, the three boys are ordered out of the palanquin. Hodson gets out his Colt revolver, and he orders them to strip naked and to hand over their bazubans and armlets and anklets and jewels. And he then shoots them dead, one after another, at point-blank range, having taken their surrender, and throws the naked bodies at the Kotwal. This is the signal for the beginning of what is probably the largest and most terrible massacre to take place at any point during British rule in India. Today, people know about Jallianwala Bagh and what happened in the Punjab in the 1920s. Very few people remember the far greater slaughter in Delhi in 1857. Many of the city by this period have fled, but still more are hiding in cellars and basements and barricading their doors and hoping for the best. Many have played no part in the rebellion whatsoever. They're just the ordinary citizens of Delhi. Some are poets, some are calligraphers, some are tradesmen, some are wood sellers, some are potters, some are sweet sellers, and so on. But that day, in the words of Edward Vibart, a 19-year-old officer, the British closed each of the gates of Delhi, and the orders went out to shoot every soul. It was literally murder, writes Vibart. I've seen many bloody and awful sights lately, but one such as I witnessed yesterday, I pray I never see again. The women were all spared, but their screams on seeing their husbands and sons butchered were most painful. Heaven knows I feel no pity. But when some old grey-bearded man is brought out and shot before your very eyes, hard must that man's heart be, I think, who can look on with indifference.